Welcome to this meeting of the 25th of September 2025. That's Maidenhead Development Management Committee. My name is Councillor Shah Martin and I will be chairing this meeting. This meeting has been held in person via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. We are not expecting the fire alarm to sound this evening. However, if it does, may I ask you to leave in an orderly fashion and rendezvous across the road outside of the library next to the fountain. Firstly, it would be useful if all voting members and officers could introduce themselves so that the public are aware of who is in the meeting and the role they're undertaking. So I'll begin with myself. I'm Councillor Sean Martin. I'll just go to my left.
I'm Adrian Waite, the Assistant Director of Planning.
Sarah White, a solicitor at Womble Dickinson, assisting the council with legal matters.
Michael Easton, Principal Planning Officer, Major Teams.
Councillor Helen Taylor, voting member of the panel.
Councillor Genevieve Gosling, standing in for Julian, the member of the panel.
Councillor Kashmir Singh from Riverside, voting member of the panel.
Clive Baskerville, voting member of the panel, substituting for Jeff Hill.
Councillor Gertsching, voting member of the panel.
Good evening, Councillor Jack Douglas, voting member of the panel.
Mikey Lloyd, Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to the committee this evening.
I request that meeting participants do not speak unless I specifically invite you to do so. Once I've invited you to speak, before you do so, please state your name and the capacity in which you are speaking if appropriate. I will also ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I'm able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or have the individual removed. I would like also to remind councillors that to improve our time and effectiveness as a committee, I'd ask you to please limit the repetition of points or questions which have already been raised by others. Where possible, put forward all new points or questions which you would like raised during your request to speak. We will now start on the agenda items. Firstly, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Walters, who is being substituted by Councillor Gosling, and Councillor Hill, who is being substituted by Councillor Baskerville.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Singh?
Yes. Had conversations with the applicants regarding this application, but coming with a clear mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I've got one myself. That's Shop Mobility. It's one of my outside bodies on the council. If that's everybody else, then we can move on to, we're not doing agenda item number 3. That's the minutes because they will be for the next meeting. So that moves on to agenda item 4. Which is our application, which is 25/010099, and that's Nicholson Centre. So if I could hand over to Michael, please, to present.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. The planning application tonight is for the Nicholson quarter. The application is a hybrid application, and it's for basically part outline and part full application for comprehensive mixed-use redevelopment of the site itself. To grant, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a satisfactory Section 106 agreement and the conditions listed in section 14 of the committee report. Furthermore, such amendments as considered appropriate to ensure the acceptable implementation of the development. There is an update sheet available. The members, it was circulated and uploaded yesterday at midday. It's a 14-page update. So I don't want to actually go through everything, but there are some points because the members we had 2 very constructive members briefings on Tuesday the 16th and Monday the 22nd of September, where members raised a number of issues regarding car parking, retail development, toilets, play spaces as well. but also we've got a number of late objections which are covered in the update sheet. So in terms of the first item was really that the members asked, was there any council commissioned report on housing and supported accommodation needs assessments that was available? And yes, there is. Basically, it was the report that was commissioned dated March 2022, basically looking at the housing and supported accommodation needs assessment. And this is an assessment of the need for housing and supported housing to the year 2035 in relation to older people and to 2030 in relation to adults with a mental health need, including autism and adults with learning disability. The report looked at the estimated net need for housing and accommodation for older people in Windsor and Maidenhead to 2035. The housing and supported accommodation estimated net need for adults with a mental health need in Windsor and Maidenhead. The housing and supported accommodation estimated net need for adults with a learning disability in Windsor and Maidenhead. And then we looked at, that report set out the district commissioned report, and then there was another report. This was the Knight Frank report, which was submitted with the application. Now, the Knight Frank report looks at, basically, it's the integrated retirement communities, IRCs, and that report looks at site and location, demographics, existing supply, future supply, demand and supply balance. And it's strongly recommended that the needs assessment is reviewed by the committee members, as this document sets out how there is clear demand for integrated retirement community developments in Maidenhead Town Centre. Then there was a question, what is the typical delay and cost of care? Later Living Industry, Body ARCO, has produced a number of studies related to IRC. Now, these are going to be covered in the PowerPoint presentation later, but the two main salient ones are housing, health and care, and putting the care in housing with care. Then there were a number of questions about, there was a new retirement scheme in Windsor wasn't full, and the implications of that are set out on page 4 of the update. Then on page 5, we look at, on Rightmove, there's a number of retirement homes for sale. What's the actual need? That's answered there. There's a question, how many jobs are generated by the C2 use? That's answered there. Then it looks at the model. What is the integrated retirement community model and the care home? That's answered there. Then we looked at retail questions. A number of retail questions were raised at the briefings. How many retail units are there at the moment? How many are commercial or retail? Why is there not a retail impact assessment for the effect? Well, that's simply because retail impact assessments are done on applications on edge of centre and out of centre developments. This is a town centre development, so there's no need for retail impact assessment. But all those details are answered at that part on page 7 of the update. What is the attraction for shoppers who wish to come to the area? And that's answered there. People driving in from the area within the borough, what's the split between apartments and multi-storey car park in terms of car parking? Are residents' car parking spaces allocated or available for use outside of certain times? There's a whole discussion about the amount of spaces and how they'd be basically used. To that extent, we've come up with a car parking management plan condition, which we've agreed with the developers, and that's on the top of page 9. Now that condition, I'm going to read that as, it's no part of the development shall be occupied until a car parking allocation and management plan showing how the car parking facilities in the multi-storey car park will be allocated, managed and enforced has been submitted to and been approved in writing by the local planning authority. The development shall be carried out and maintained in accordance with the approved plan. The reason for this is to ensure that car parking is allocated fairly and to demand that would not lead to roadside parking, which could be detrimental to the free flow of traffic and to highway safety. It's in accordance with policies IF2 and QP3 of the adopted borough local plan. Questions have been raised by members also on the car parking methodology in the transport assessment, saying that some of the spaces are temporary, some are some way from actually outside the town centre too, as in Braywick. Now, in terms of that, there was a council senior members officers brief based on evidence-based work and reflecting a push to encourage non-car travel, responds to the identified climate change emergency to reduce and also completely remove car parking. The application reflects that brief strategy. And this strategy and the application have all been third-party reviewed and agreed throughout the process, both pre and post planning submission. None of the members raised concerns about public toilets, where public toilets can be basically provided as part of this development. No dedicated public toilets are provided as part of the proposed development on the basis that it is creating a new high street retail environment and not a shopping centre, which may have such an offer. The scheme is providing a changing places facility. The members were concerned about play space for children, so when we go shopping, the children actually have soft play areas to actually play in. But in terms of that, the proposed development will deliver spaces within the public realm which can be used by visitors to the town centre as informal play, noting other requirements on these spaces for seating and landscaping. There's a requirement to provide a management plan, which, top of page 10, will refer to play space opportunities on a more informal basis. There are nearby parks, green spaces for more formal play space, and playgrounds too. In addition, although there are no policy requirements for provision of play space from the Class E units, commercial units, within the proposed development, specifically, there is scope for play to be provided, soft play, via operators who could take place on commercial terms. The residential parts of the proposed development, the C3 use and C2, generate a play space requirement reflecting guidance. This is provided for on-site with both formal and informal play, including private amenity, and also access to existing surrounding parks, green spaces, playgrounds in the town centre. And this reflects guidance requirements. Moving on to highway matters, since the report was published, the iTransport Limited are acting on behalf of the Council's Highways DC team. And they requested the submission of a road safety audit and clarification on the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And in terms of the EV charging infrastructure, information has been submitted and confirmed and agreed. In terms of a road safety audit, a stage 1 road safety audit has been carried out to the satisfaction of our iTransport colleagues and ourselves. So in terms of that, the consultation responses from iTransport on behalf of our own Highways DC team are noted. And it's noted from the iTransport are raising no objection to proposed development. They've recommended conditions and section 106, but all those conditions and the heads of terms of the 106 were actually covered in the report before we received the final submission from iTransport. So everything is covered in terms of both conditions and heads of terms. Next one, we received 21 letters of objection to this development in the committee report, but then we've received 4 further letters of objection, and they're merely from members of the public supporting the objection submitted by Eco Action. And you're going to hear 2 speakers tonight speaking against this development on behalf of Eco Action. 2 speakers, Graham Owens and Andrew Hill. Now, the Eco Action objection centres around paragraph 199 of the Sustainability SPD adopted last year, which requires development proposals to retain existing buildings where possible. And the Eco Action objection letter was uploaded on the 21st of July, and their comments have been summarised in the committee report. But beyond that, the applicant as well submitted a letter setting out a rebuttal on that, which is set out in the update itself over pages 10, 11 and 12 and on to 13. And on that, The contents of the letter submitted by the applicant on 27th of August, which provides a formal response to the comments raised by Eco Action, are noted. And the council's own sustainability officer has raised no objection to the proposed development. Next one on page 13, the applicant questioned a number of conditions, 4 conditions, conditions 10, 38, 39 and 47 in the committee report. These were, 10 was to do with EV charging points, 38, 39 and 47 were to do about accessibility. The conditions, the issues raised by the applicant were just to ensure that those conditions were policy compliant. Those recommendations are accepted by the officers and the conditions to be amended in terms of the wording on page 13 of the update sheet. The next one was a late objection we received yesterday on behalf of Aegon, the owner, sorry, the long leasehold interest in Nicholson House. They were concerned, they'd raised concerns, they'd raised no objection, but they'd requested a construction management plan condition. Now on that, the view of the officers here is that the issues raised in terms of are actually covered by environmental health legislation and building regulations and should not be duplicated by the planning system. So there's no need for a construction management plan condition. That was the end of the update sheet. So on that, I'll move on now to the presentation. In terms of overview...
Michael, just before you do, just
Sorry.
to correct, Andrew Hill, you mentioned has been part of Eco Action. He isn't speaking on behalf of them, just to
Right.
correct you on that update that you
Okay.
did. Thank
Right,
you.
okay.
Carry on, sorry.
Right. So in terms of this, the Nicholson Shopping Centre forms part of land and complies with site allocation pro forma AL1 Nicholson Centre under policy QP1A of the Borough Local Plan, which has been allocated for retail, employment, leisure, community and residential uses. The proposed development follows on from an extant permission granted in October 2022 for a comprehensive mixed-use redevelopment in 6 zones after the demolition of the majority of the existing buildings on site, but the retention of Nicholson House and Brock House. The current proposal would see nearly all of the site forming part of the detailed planning application, with only Zone 3 in outline. Other material considerations relating to flood risk, highways, surface water drainage, sustainability, ecology, noise, air quality and biodiversity net gain are also considered acceptable. The economic benefits of the proposed development are considered to be significant. Improvements to the public realm include opening up the historic streets and providing the new St Nicholas Winton Public Square and Moffat Square, and they again are considered to be significant benefits. Therefore, it's recommended that planning permission be granted, subject to the completion and signing of a Section 106 agreement. In terms of the proposed development, the proposal includes provision of 755 C3 apartments and 101 C2 senior independent living apartments. The balance between residential and office provision of the extant permission has been revised, resulting in a significant reduction of the office space and a marked increase in the number of apartments from 653 in the extant permission to 856 in this application. A viability statement has been independently reviewed, which confirms that the scheme cannot viably provide affordable housing. The proposal would provide 12,379 square metres of office use and approximately 3,643 square metres of flexible retail use arranged in 6 zones. The buildings would range in height up to a 20-storey building in Zone 5. The new buildings will include air source heat pumps and photovoltaic panels, solar panels. The proposal includes a green infrastructure, including the creation of 0.6 hectares of new public realm, including 2 public squares, Nicholas Winton Square and a Moffat Square. The amenity space is provided in the form of private balconies and communal podiums and roof gardens. The proposed scheme comprises of 521 car parking spaces and 890 cycle spaces. This is the red line view of the site itself with Sienna Court, that part owned by the council, the building there, that is outside the application. That's excluded from this development. The next one gives you context. Basically, it's an aerial photo from the northwest at Maidenhead Town Centre. You've got Nicholson House itself, which will be retained, and Sienna Court there. Then beyond Broadway, you've got one Maidenhead. What else? We've got the High Street as well, and it's basically framed by King Street and Queen Street. Those are the four main streets, the four main thoroughfares bounding the site. So again, this is the actual layout plan of the site itself. Looking at it, you can see that basically Queen Street, the development is set back from behind Queen Street and from the majority of High Street, but it would actually front onto both King Street and Broadway. This one here actually shows you all the zones. You've got Zone 1 fronting Nicholson Lane and King Street. You've got Zone 2 with the entrance fronting onto High Street itself, with Nicholson House being retained. Then you've got next to that St Nicholas Winton Square. Then you've got Zone 3. Now Zone 3 is the outline element of the whole scheme. Zone 4 is taken up by the multi-storey car park. Then you've got Zone 5, and Zone 5 includes the highest building, the 20-storey. You'll all recall that the previous extant permission included a 25-storey building, so this has gone down to 20 stories. And then finally, Zone 6 on the junction of Broadway and King Street itself. We'll see some visuals later of what this scheme's going to look like. That again just shows you basically the green, the full detailed application is green, and the hatched beige is the outline, and Sienna Court is outside the development completely. So what are the benefits, economic impacts of that? Regeneration of a previously developed brownfield site in Maidenhead Town Centre. The provision of 856 new residential units comprising 755 apartments and 101 senior independent living apartments. The proposed development will contribute significantly to the council's 5-year housing land supply, which is currently 4.04 years. Proposed development will contribute significantly to the 5-year housing land supply. A proposed development would provide 11,350 square metres of flexible office space, creation of up to 1,174 new full-time jobs, and 400 jobs per year during the demolition and construction phases. The creation of 11,350 square metres of office floor space, which is considered to be a significant beneficial effect, and with significant investment in Maidenhead of approximately £500 million. Residents are expected, who actually live in the scheme, to spend £8.2 million a year. Workers are expected to spend £3.2 million a year. The new housing generated was spending an additional £11.6 million a year in this area. Replace existing shopping centre with over 55 new retail and commercial units. The regeneration is in line with and in compliance with the site allocation pro forma in AL1 Nicholson Centre in the Borough Local Plan. And you've got the provision of these two new squares, Nicholas Winton Square and Moffat Square. We'd also achieve 800% biodiversity net gain and a carbon saving of 66% compared with Part L 2021 baseline. In summary, in the proposed development, the concept that underpins the proposed development is to create a mixed-use development across a range of building sizes to attract new and existing businesses, retailers and residents to the Nicholson Quarter in the town centre. The buildings would range up to 20 stories high. Proposed floor space comprises 12,379 square metres of office space and approximately 3,643 square metres of flexible retail use, and flexible is the word. The height, layout and appearance of the development has been driven through feedback provided by officers at pre-app. The principle of commercial, retail, residential development is considered to be in accordance with the site allocation AL1, the local plan. And the Maidenhead Town Centre is undergoing significant regeneration, which will have an impact on the character of the townscape, brought about by the introduction of a greater number of taller, larger scale developments. The proposal does not differ significantly from these other developments in terms of scale or use, and would contribute towards the borough's housing need within a sustainable town centre location. In terms of specific matters, the principle of the development, we haven't got a housing land supply. So we've got paragraph 11D2 of the National Planning Policy Framework is now engaged. And the development is subject to assessment under the tilted balance, where there's a presumption in favour of approving the development, subject to assessment not finding any significant or demonstrable harms. The principle of the development is considered to be acceptable. The Knight Frank Group has prepared the Seniors Housing Planning Assessment, April 25, which has been submitted with the application to identify local demand for a proposed senior living offer. The Knight Frank study demonstrates a significant shortfall of senior independent living units in the borough, which alongside significant growth in the 65 plus and 75 plus age group establishes substantial future demand for the proposed offer. Proposed development significantly contributes towards the established target of 15,000 square metres of office accommodation in the site allocation, Nicholson Centre, and should be supported accordingly. I'm going to show you 4 slides now on the C2 element, the senior independent living element. First one is the NHS and adult social care savings. This is the ARCO report we referred to in the update sheet. This is putting the care in housing with care. That they stated for residents in integrated retirement communities, costs like general practitioners, nurses and hospital visits reduced by 38%. £5.6 billion in savings will be made for the health and social care system if the sector achieves its aim of 250,000 over 65s living in an integrated retirement community by the year 2030. An average of only 8.7% of residents need to move into a more expensive residential care home after living in one of these integrated retirement communities. The next slide, same report. This is the putting the care in housing with care. Up to 20% of residents experience a drop in care needs upon moving into an integrated retirement community due to improvements in health and well-being. Residents experience a reduction in falls within 2 years of moving into one of these IRCs. There are 20% fewer hours of care need to be delivered due to health and well-being benefits experienced by residents. This has the potential to reduce the number of care staff needed by the social care system by tens of thousands. This is a separate report. This is the housing, health and care, the health and wellbeing benefits of retirement communities, again by ARCO. Let's get this sum again. 61% of residents reported that their health was about the same since moving in, and 10% reported improvements. The average age of respondents was 82, and they had lived in the retirement community for an average of 4.5 years. Given the health decline expected as people age, it's noteworthy that so many felt their health was the same or better since moving in. Additional economic benefits from the second report, ARCO report. These benefits of a typical integrated retirement community include employing between 25 and 45 people across a range of sectors, the creation of temporary employment opportunities during construction and support services for the ongoing operation of the care community, additional local spend through resident spending. As a quote here, a 2021 report undertaken on behalf of Homes for Later Living found that schemes providing housing for older people create more local economic value and more local jobs than any other type of residential development, with each scheme generating approximately £550,000 of spending per year, and that's 347,000 of which is spent on the local high street. Now we're actually moving on to the layout, design, character and appearance of the proposed development at Nicholson Quarter. The proposal would enhance the existing townscape by replacing the Nicholson Centre, which is a nondescript shopping mall, which includes a number of enclosed service yards and dead ends. The proposal opens up historic streets and provides an improved permeable pedestrian environment, providing a range of small commercial and retail units and new public spaces, providing interest and passive surveillance. The tallest building provides legibility for the town centre. By providing a mix and intensity of uses, providing homes, jobs and leisure activities, it helps to energise and enhance the town centre. The design of the 20-storey building has been enhanced, and it now feels balanced with more elegant proportions, forming the principles of a good building as compared with the previous 25-storey building in the previous application. The multi-storey car park design, again, has been improved with enhanced screening through residential uses in Zone 5 adjacent to it, and the introduction of active ground floor uses on the Broadway frontage. Again, carrying on in terms of layout, design, character, and appearance, the entrance to the Nicholson Quarter on the High Street frontage has been enhanced through the use of materials and the size and accentuated massing of the entrance feature. In terms of the 20-storey building, the scheme offers a simplified facade of high-quality materials with a lattice of precast concrete, vertical elements, and inset green masonry panels, which vary in colour and texture from its base to the top. The brick base has now been removed to allow the architecture of the tower to extend to the ground. The proposed development would form a very small part of the distant horizon in views from Clevedon and would not distract from the panoramic views from this historic asset, or would not harm its heritage significance or an ability to appreciate heritage significance. The proposal would be visible from Clevedon, and there would be less than substantial harm identified to heritage assets. However, when compared to the extant permission, the proposal will reduce visual prominence via the 5-storey reduction in the height of the tallest element. Any harms are considered to be outweighed by the benefits of the proposal, and overall, the scheme is considered to comply with the development plan policies. In terms of scale, height, and massing, we've got the council's building height and tall buildings supplementary planning document. And that defines a tall building as an exceptional development that's significantly higher than the buildings in its surrounding context, and that notably breaks the skyline. A building of more than 1.5 times the contextual height, or a minimum of 2 additional stories above the contextual height, whichever is the greater, will be considered a tall building in the borough. The proposed development will not conflict with the surrounding context with respect to the building height sought as part of the proposal. Paragraph 130A of the National Planning Policy Framework says, if we have an anticipated or existing shortage of land for meeting identified housing needs, it's especially important that planning policies and decisions avoid homes being built at low densities. Criteria A goes on to say that standards should seek a significant uplift in the average density of residential development within these areas, unless it can be shown that there are strong reasons why this will be inappropriate. Given this is a tilted balance application, we have to look to increasing densities on the site in line with the National Planning Policy Framework. Taking the above into consideration, it's accepted the instance that the proposed development is acceptable. This slide is the heights plan. Now, members will recall our site visit on the 16th of September. We walked around the site itself along the High Street. You've got 10-storey, just off Nicholson Street, to the northern parts of the site, all the way up to 20-storey on Zone 5. But they're going down to, we've got single-storey near the entrance on King Street, sorry, on our High Street, 8-storey again on King Street, and 12, 13-storey fronting King Street. But 17 on 20 on Broadway, you're facing one Maidenhead. So there is a range in the heights, all less than 25 stories, all range from 1 story to 20. The next one is High Street. So we're now going to look at a number of CGIs of the views. This is basically facing the entrance to Nicholson Quarter on High Street itself. You see the refurbished and reconfigured entrance. And this one is a full-on view of the entrance, the use of materials, the scale and massing of it, It gives you a sense of proportion and a sense of arrival. Next one is King Street. This is looking to this is looking north towards Taproom from Broadway. This is St. Nicholas Winton Square, or one of the two squares within the development. Now this is Desborough Way, it's off Broadway, looking into the site itself from Broadway, looking towards Nicholson House. Again, you can see the public realm, you see the hard and soft landscaping, the materials. This again is St. Nicholas Winton Square. This is a view from off the tap. Now you're looking at the scale and massing of the buildings themselves beyond off the tap. This is King Street on the left. And this is pedestrian route. This is Desborough Way. This is Desborough Way, this is off Broadway again. So you get the idea of the scale and massing of the building in keeping with the other recent buildings within the town centre. This is from King Street. So you see all the activity at the ground floor in terms of retail and commercial, resi above with the balconies, podium, again, the green space, open space, play areas, play space. This is the square. This is the junction of Broadway and King Street. So you're looking up towards the tap room on the left. This is the junction. So a whole range of different materials are used, brick and cladding. So that gives you a feel for the scale, massing and height of the development. Next, so we're looking at a couple of slides now about transport and highways and what, in terms of the benefits of the scheme, there's going to be the heads of terms have been agreed for Section 106, which includes Section 278 highway works under the Highways Act 1980. Now, this includes provision of 3 disabled parking bays on Nicholson's Lane, relocation of 2 blue badge bays from King Street to Nicholson's Lane, introduction of a new loading bay on Nicholson's Lane, a new loading bay on Broadway, new bus stop on Broadway, alterations of the bus stand on Broadway, footway widening and provision of raised tables at crossovers for the car parks accessed off Broadway, modified entrance to the multi-storey car park on Broadway, introduction of curb build-out, and introduction of 2 new loading bays on King Street. So the next slide is going to show you what and where all that means. That's it. Basically, you've got High Street, Queen Street, Broadway, King Street. You've got relocation of 2 bays on blue badge bays from King Street to Nicholson Lane, 3 blue badge bays on King Street, just behind on Nicholson Lane, new loading bays on Nicholson Lane, nothing on Queen Street. Then you go on to Broadway bus stand, modified entrance to the multi-storey car park, introduction of a new bus stop on Broadway, and then on High Street, we've got introduction of 2 new loading bays. So all that's going to be covered by Section 278. The next one is basically, in terms of parking provision, it's all going in the multi-storey car park in Zone 5. And that's basically the pineapple design, innovative pineapple design of the multi-storey car park, and then the actual layout of the car park itself. It would work. Next one, moving on from highways to flood risk. So the site is entirely within flood zone 1. This is to be at low risk of flooding. The application has been accompanied by a comprehensive drainage strategy, which comprises attenuation and discharge into the sewer network. Due to the lack of open space around the site, attenuation basins and infiltration cannot be implemented. So surface water runoff is proposed to be pumped within the site before discharging to surface water sewer by gravity. The surface water runoff is proposed to be restricted to provide 50% betterment from existing by means of a range of surface water drainage features, including blue roofs, permeable paving, underground attenuation tanks, and above ground tanks. Proposals have been designed to cater for a 1 in 100 year storm event plus 40% climate change allowance in accordance with best practice and the National Planning Policy Framework. And the lead local authority is satisfied with the proposed surface water drainage and has recommended a condition. Infrastructure delivery. All this infrastructure has got to meet the tests in Regulation 122 of the Community Infrastructure Levy Regs 2010. First is it necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms? Does it directly relate to the development? And is it fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development? So that's what we must ask ourselves every time in terms of the section 106 and infrastructure improvements. We're seeing on this a provision of 800% net gain in biodiversity, which is considerable, not just 10%, but 800%, and the highway improvements we mentioned earlier. Next, looking at basically the benefits, and the benefits are on the left: regeneration of the brownfield site, provision of the new apartments, contributes to the 5-year housing land supply, substantial business accommodation, full-time jobs, significant investment in Maidenhead, contributes significantly to the local economy, replacement of a tired, unsightly existing shopping centre with over 55 new retail and flexible commercial units, provision of 1.65 acres of new open space, including these 2 new squares, St Nicholas Quinton and Moffat Square, the BNG and the carbon saving of 66%. On the harms, you've got effect on the proposal on the character of the conservation area and impact on listed buildings. The overall harm is considered to be less than substantial. So we had to balance the impact of less than substantial harm against the benefits, and the benefits substantially outweigh the harm. And the next one is the reduction of daylight to the rear of number 95 High Street, and the reduction in sunlight to the rear of numbers 20, 22, 36, 38 and 40 Queen Street, but considered to be of limited weight given the small scale of the overall impact. Chair, that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Michael. Before I open this up to the floor, I've got a total of 3 speakers. So firstly, could I call Graham Owens up to the chair there? And when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm objecting to this proposal on behalf of EcoAction, the Climate Emergency Coalition and its 10,000 supporters, and the over 20 individuals also objected to this planning permit application. There are 2 issues: the environmental irresponsibility of general demolition and reconstruction at a time of growing climate breakdown, the foolishness of destroying a large enclosed structure and replacing it with open spaces. Our climate is rapidly becoming much less benign. We've had torrential rain and 4 heat waves in the last 12 months. The people of Maidenhead will need more protection, not less. Detailed arguments behind these objections are all on the planning portal. A summary may also be found in the officer's report, sections 1085 to 1095. I will not repeat them now. Instead, I will challenge you to think very differently about this opportunity by offering 3 predictions and a different way forward. The first provisional prediction is that despite your individual misgivings, you're inclined to reluctantly agree with the recommendation of the planning officer and permit this application for now. The second prediction is much more substantial. It is the elephant in the room. It's the money. £500 million was not found 3 years ago because investors decided that this was the wrong project for this place at that time. It was commercially non-viable. Substantial inflation in construction costs over 3 years has made the situation much worse. The submission's viability assessment now predicts a profit margin of just 1.5%, less than 1/10 of the target for viability. It remains the wrong project for this place at this time. Whatever may be said tonight, the project remains commercially non-viable and £500 million will just not be found. And the third prediction is just depressing. Your approval of a non-viable project will cause an additional 3-year planning bite.
1 minute remaining.
Sorry? It need not be like this. If you listen to your misgivings and reject this application, all existing permissions will lapse at the end of October. Work can then start immediately on a different way forward, the right project for this place at the right time. This would be a much more sustainable and responsible alternative, retaining the existing shopping centre and as many of the other buildings as is possible, repurposing and refurbishing them to be commercially viable in a post-retailed world by meeting the real needs of our community. and imaginatively infilling with attractive accommodation, offices and car park elsewhere. It would only cost a fraction of 500 million and could therefore happen. So for the sake of the tortured and suffering planet that our grandchildren will inherit, the comfort and safety of Maidenhead, Maidonians suffering in extreme weather in the future, and avoiding a 3-year planning bite on this valuable site, please have the courage, wisdom, and indeed common sense to reject this non-viable application. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Graham. Next, I've got Andrew Hill, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
And when you're ready, Andrew, you have 3 minutes with a 1-minute warning.
Councillors, you are making the biggest decision in Maidenhead Town's history. This is a terrifying application. The fire audit says the design is so flawed that turning fire engines may hit adjacent buildings. And what about the millions of pounds in business rates that the council loses from demolished shops? Have Arelli agreed to cover this revenue loss, or are officers expecting council taxpayers to subsidise them? At the last meeting, I dubbed this project Maidenhead. Under the Lib Dems, you sensibly approved a tall building SPD that officers quote in full at paragraph 10.212 and then just completely ignore. The SPD says, quote, any new application for the Nicholson site will need to be in accordance with the 16-storey maximum guidance. But it isn't, is it, officers? If officers want to set a 20-storey policy, they have to stand for election like everyone else. We are in a cost of living crisis and residents need large, value-orientated businesses like Iceland and Robert Dias, but well-paid officers prefer a town centre with tiny boutique shops. That vision might have made sense in 2017, but it died with COVID, tariffs and wars. We need a town centre for everyone, not just the rich. If we demolish the warm Nicholson and its toilets, why would anyone else pay £7 car parking in a roofless town centre with fewer shops and a freezing wind tunnel? Marks and Spencer's have been closing stores nationally. What will they do if footfall falls massively during a decade of construction? The whole high street is at risk. During the BLP meetings, the council assured the inspector that this scheme would deliver 30% affordable housing and at least 17.5% profit. It's actually delivering absolutely no affordable housing and a laughable 1.5% profit. I can get 4% by just shoving a bag of money in the Nationwide. The council surveyor BPS states, quote, we question how the scheme is deliverable on this basis. That means Arelli could demolish the town centre, lose investors or go bankrupt and never rebuild. The NPPF requires you to be absolutely certain major schemes are financially sound and realistically deliverable. But it's not. The applicant's own risk assessment by Charter Surveyors DS2 says the expenditure risk is high risk. This is just, quote, this is just over a 10-year programme that is inherently risky due to, quote, fluctuations in property markets, political change, interest rates, new building regs, labour availability and more. What councillor or investor would take that foolish bet for a 1.5% return? I beg you to consider the maiden hell of a maiden hole in the ground where a town centre used to be that never gets rebuilt. The adverse harms and massive risks identified by the applicant's own surveyors substantially and demonstrably outweigh the minor benefits of a few Gucci shops. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next, can I call up Will Robinson, please? Will, you have 6 minutes because we've had 2 objectors speak, so you have 6 minutes and a 1-minute warning.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Will Robinson, Head of Development at Arelli, the Development Manager for TKO Capital, the owners of the Nicholson Shopping Centre. Since 2019, we have worked alongside stakeholders, officers and members of the council as part of our extensive community planning and engagement programme to create a new vision for the shopping centre, one that revitalises and reinvigorates the town centre, ensuring its long-term vitality and delivering benefits to everyone. From the very outset, our focus has been on developing a carefully thought out new place that specifically meets the aspirations of residents, whilst also supporting local businesses. It's a responsibility that we've always taken very, very seriously. Our 2019 community planning process guided us in shaping the proposals, and it was the residents who named the various spaces and streets, including Sir Nicholas Winton Square. And it was this process that ultimately shaped the May 2020 planning application and overall vision. Our firm belief in and commitment to the community planning process was demonstrated with 82% public support for the original proposal, which was subsequently unanimously approved by the Development Management Committee in March 2021. Tonight marks another key milestone in our journey towards delivering a newly revitalised Maidenhead Town Centre, building on the vision embodied in the consented scheme. Since we began this journey in 2019, there have always been two constants. Number one, the Nicholson Shopping Centre is one of the most important and significant projects in the regeneration of Maidenhead Town Centre. And two, we are 100% committed to delivery of this key project, creating a vibrant town centre for the entire community. We have, however, had to try and navigate a sequence of unprecedented headwinds: COVID, build cost inflation, increased interest rates, and political and global instability. This has resulted in a need to make adjustments to the proposals to ensure that they are viable, deliverable, and compliant with new regulations, including fire safety, as well as providing an opportunity to further improve upon the originally approved vision. The core principles of mixed-use development and great placemaking that were established with the community as part of the original vision have all been retained in the application that you are considering this evening. The improved scheme before you tonight has been evolved over the last 2 years through further engagement with stakeholders, councillors and officers, local groups and residents and businesses in Maidenhead. Following our consultation event in February of this year, 90% of people who responded were either in favour or neutral, and only 10% opposed the scheme. The proposals before you maintain and improve upon all of the key and previously supported principles of the consented scheme. We have worked with officers to respond to the borough's climate emergency. The consented scheme is indeed one of the most environmentally sustainable projects ever proposed in the borough, and this application is even more sustainable. The parking provision reflects engagement with the council, and it was agreed that there is an opportunity to better utilise the capacity in the existing town centre car parks. This strategy is in line with both national and local planning policy, and it was concluded through the pre-application process that is neither economically nor environmentally sustainable to build new car parking spaces where sufficient capacity already exists. The Nicholson Quarter is also providing twice the accessible spaces required, a new shop mobility unit and EV charging spaces, resulting in a more accessible town centre for residents and visitors. And the application is supported by People to Places and the Disability and Inclusion Forum. Our design improvements have included a reduction in overall height. A materials palette evolved through engagement with our award-winning architects JTP and the design officer of the council. The residential component provides a market-facing mix of residential typologies, including senior living in the form of an integrated retirement community. This will not only meet an established and forecast need, but will also grow the town centre community, which is absolutely essential to the long-term prosperity of the town centre. And it will also help to protect the green belt in the process. The mix of commercial and retail units, a key part of this vision, is a well thought out and deliverable blend of uses and unit sizes, responding to market demand and reflecting conversations with prospective tenants. The proposals provide broadly the same number of units as the shopping centre today, but with some smaller units, which we've specifically focused on local and independent businesses alongside national retailers, and will be available on flexible and supportive terms. A significant office provision has been retained. The proposals also provide 1.65 acres of public realm, an increase of 10% from the existing consent. Consequently, Maidenhead Town Centre's appeal to residents and visitors alike will be significantly improved. The new homes are projected to generate an additional £8.2 million every year flowing into the local economy. It's little wonder, therefore, that the Times newspaper described the Nicholson's Quarter as the blueprint to save our town centres. We are pleased that the application is being heard tonight by this committee with a recommendation for approval from the officers. Tonight, members have the opportunity to secure a £500 million investment into Maidenhead. We believe that we have demonstrated over the last 6.5 years the total commitment of Arelli to the delivery of this project. And it's also worth highlighting the full and unwavering commitment of TKO, the owners of the shopping centre, who have attended consultation events, regular process progress meetings with the council, and indeed are here again in force tonight. We are now ready to deliver this development, with both demolition and main contractors lined up and ready to commence. And therefore, respectfully, we request your support tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have no other speakers, so I'm ready to open this up to the floor. So firstly, if we can start with any questions for the officers about the presentation before we open up the debate. If you don't have any questions, we can go straight to debate. So, Councillor Douglas.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, can we just get an explanation of the retail space shrinkage? I'm confused the two different sort of areas where this is mentioned in the report. Let me just see if I can find that. So we've got 5.25 and 10.17. One of them seems to show a reduction as a factor of 4, and one of them is a factor of 2. If you add up the figures in the table, which am I reading wrong?
Unfortunately, sir, I don't have the report in front of me.
Okay. Well, I was looking at this, in the last couple of hours before the meeting, and it just suddenly struck me. I mean, it seems quite a significant difference between the figures in the breakdown and the top line figure, which says we're only getting just over a 50% reduction. I mean, 75% is a lot more than 50%.
The reduction of about 20% from the original 15,000 metres squared to just over 12,000.
Councillor Singh. Okay. Can you press the button next time and then indicate, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it really, Chair. If we can't get an answer to the question, that's fine. But, if someone can give us an answer, that'd be useful. Thank you.
Michael, you said you haven't got a report in front of you. If you've got internet access, you can pull it down. Do you have the report in front of you? Did you want to have time to pull it on from the meeting details?
Sorry, Councillor Douglas, I've got the report open, but Sarah and I were discussing something else at the time. You mentioned paragraph numbers, so we didn't quite hear the question. So if you could just repeat the paragraphs you wanted me and the figure you wanted me to check, I can do that for you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. So 10.17 gives the sort of the headline figure of a reduction of just somewhat over 50%, but 5.25 has a table of proposed and existing sizes broken down into different types, and adding up the numbers there doesn't seem to come to anything like that.
Can I come back to you? Yeah. I've actually got a question. I don't know if it's a big one or a large one that you might have to come back to me on, but there's a couple of things: shop mobility, location details, where are they going to be, and how are they going to be managed in the interim whilst construction's taking place? And probably the same goes for Nicholson's house as well. Are they going to get continued pedestrian access and fire escape routes? And will noise and disturbance be kept to a minimum because they house NHS patients? So that needs to be dealt with. Can I just leave that with you? And if you want to come back to me, or if you've got the answers, that's fine. Can I go to Councillor Helen Taylor, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few queries on what's been said about conditions that have or have not been put into place. I'm quite concerned about this car park management plan condition. We've had this before at the Loftings in Maidenhead, where it was a condition that no building should, no apartment should be occupied until the car park management plan was done. It was never done. It was never enforced. And now there's massive problems. So I'd like to ask, how tight is that condition? Is it going to be enforced? Are we going to know that it's been put into place before the apartments are occupied? Because that's a real worry for me, given the issues in my ward. I'd also like to ask about the mention of, well, we don't need a planning condition around Nicholson's house because it's been covered elsewhere. I don't agree that we don't need it to be covered, because what we don't want is for there not to be enough protection in regards to Nicholson's house whilst the development is going on. We don't want another Smokies debacle, which overshadowed the previous application, and I really don't think enough thought has been given to protect the users or the leaseholders of Nicholson's house during this development. And I've also got concerns about the lack of this public toilets, because, you know, you're talking about putting C2 residential in there, which is specifically put into the report that it will be people over 65. Now, if you're going to put 102, 105 households in there over the age of 65 and give them public realm open space, which they're going to use because people like to get out and have a wander around, and it's going to be really convenient for them that they've got open spaces by their housing, to not have public toilets seems bizarre. It's good that they are providing a change in places facility, which disabled people can use. But I wonder, is that enough, given the amount of people that are likely, you know, the increase in, never mind the retail that's going in there, the you know, the 800 odd apartments, that's a massive increase of population in that area. To have public open space that they want people to enjoy and no public facilities just seems a bit ridiculous, to be fair. So I just want planners' thoughts on that really as well, because, you know, the facilities we've got currently aren't great, and it's a hot bone of contention with people in the town centre. And, you know, are we going to be in a situation where people are going into restaurants and asking to use the toilets, because that's not going to go down very well. And, you know, that's going to complicate things even more. So I just wanted to bring that up, really.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Did you have any of the answers so far, of the questions so far? You're still working on it. Does anybody else have any questions? Councillor Gershting.
Chair, I just wanted to raise a couple of points that the speakers have spoken about, which is just playing on my mind. The viability about this 1.5% profit, is that something that as a committee we need to take into consideration, whether the scheme viable is going to get built out or not? I know there's been different views from speakers. Thank you.
Yes, on the viability point, I mean, the profit margin indicated is below the norm and below the desired, but the scheme is indicating that it's positive and viable in that circumstance. So there's no requirement to test delivery on development management decisions in terms of the NPPF or the BLP. The affordable housing, etc., has been subject to a review clause, which always has profit share in. So, of course, if build costs or things improve, then there's a profit share. So it's not a matter for the Development Control Committee tonight whether it's viable or not. That ultimately will be a decision for the developer whether they proceed. But you know, one cannot imagine they would invest money in starting the build process unless they were confident they were going to carry it on.
Thank you for that. Okay, yes, I was just playing on our minds. And there was another thing that was mentioned by one of the speakers, which I just wanted to check. In terms of the planning permission, they said that the planning permission existing is going to expire in October. I just wanted to just confirm that, because on the report it says that it's extent planning permission. What does that mean? Extent and Existing? Existing?
Existing, that's
Is that going to expire in October, or what is the position there? Please.
I mean, so that's the existing planning permission, which is a material planning consideration in considering a new application. It's subject to a time limit for implementation, like any other planning permission is. I don't have the precise date before me, but the important thing with a existing planning permission is the fact that A, it can be implemented, but B, also the logic that went into the decision making and the need for consistency on matters of decision making as well. So it is an extant planning permission that is a material consideration that members do need to take into account tonight.
Okay, because what I was trying to understand is, has that been implemented already? Is that the fallback position that we are considering today?
It hasn't been implemented, but the existence of the planning permission is a material consideration that the committee can't ignore.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted a legal definition on that position. Thank you very much for that, Adrian. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, councillor Singh. Do we have any other questions before we move on to debate? I've just got one small question, just on parking, just clarification of Hines Meadow has 1,281 spaces. Does that include the ones we're leasing out to the offices at the moment, or is that the total spaces in Hines Meadow? Because we lease a couple of floors, I think, to businesses. So I don't know if that's been included in the stats. Thank you. And councillor Gosling, did you want to come in with a question while they're coming back to us on a few points?
Yes, I do, because Nicholson's Walk previously had 734 spaces, and the public parking now for the new Nicholson's Walk has only got 100, because we've got a lot of flats being built there. And in Princess Square and Bracknell, there are 534 car parking spaces for the public. And there's been stated there's plenty of parking in Maidenhead, but from what I've been hearing, the closest is Hines car park, and its rundown has problems with the lifts. So parents would want to use the lifts for the buggies. And if you're considering regenerating an area, I think you need to have enough parking so that people from outside the area can come and visit, meet their friends, etc. Not have to try and find somewhere to park in the area where it's, I mean, I used to live in Maidenhead and I loved this Nicholson's Walk, and I had my young children there and I used it quite a lot. So it disappoints me that this new development hasn't allowed for the public car parking. I'm just wondering, I mean, I presume the cost of underground car parking is out of the question because of the margins there, but I really feel that we need to look into the parking in more detail.
Thank you, councillor Gosling. Do we have any more questions before we move on to the debate? I know we're waiting for some answers for a few bits and pieces as well, so I'll bring Adrian in at some point. Did you want to add something, councillor Gosling?
Yes, I do want to add something, because there's an enormous amount of viability study done on independent living. I'm not terribly keen on independent living, having heard from a lot of people that have gone into it that they wish they hadn't and had just bought a flat. 101 independent living flats isn't going to make a huge amount of difference. I'm very involved with helping people who are the elderly. I like to keep them in their homes. I do totally agree that mixing in the community, and the more you make people independent and leave them, I mean, a lot of people stay in their own homes as long as possible. It's a good idea to have bells and things, but you can have an independent lifestyle by buying a little thing you put around your neck and things like that. I do think it's nice to be in a flat, and to visit the local community, which you could do. You don't need to have independent living flats. You could just have another 101 flats here, and the people in the flats would maybe spend more money. But it's the choice. If you're over 55, you could buy a flat. You don't have to have independent living. So I question that, and I have questioned it before at other planning meetings. I'm not totally in favour of independent living in this regard, although I do accept that in some cases it's good, and I've visited people in these apartments, but flats are just as good for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. The first is to our officers. They claim there's going to be 800% gain in biodiversity. I have not seen or heard of that anywhere in the UK or overseas, let alone RBWM. On what basis are they claiming this? And even if they're using a non-native planting, how is that going to be possible? That's the first. And the social housing is amiss on this because the profits are so low. Within 1 year, inflation at this rate, at 4% plus, that's CPI. RPI is normally 1 or 2% higher. And the inflation, according to builders and so on, is a lot higher. I can't see this scheme being viable at any point, the way it's been presented to us. And the third question is, our own SPD says, which was adopted in December 2023 and voted for, that is the maximum is 16 stories. Now, this has been approved on this application at 20 stories. On what basis? Thank you.
Thank you. How are we doing with any answers?
I'll attempt some of them.
You might have to help me if we've missed some bits and pieces here, because there's been quite a few that have come back. If you want to start on what you have got information from, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll attempt Councillor Douglas's first, because that was the first question. I'm not sure I have an absolutely definitive answer. I get the figures in the table at 5.2. If I add up the retail and the office floor space to be about 4,900, 5,000, I suspect that the difference or any discrepancy is probably down to how counting some of the public realm might have happened in certain figures, because obviously the retail floor space figures for the existing Nicholson's, which is all an internal building and therefore all floor space, are probably a bit different from what we're looking at with the new scheme, which is just individual shops. So that's as much clarity as I've been able to get while people have been talking, but there is a discrepancy, you're quite right, between those two figures. Moving on, if I try and answer a couple of the ones about shop mobility and potentially public toilets, etc. I think in terms of shop mobility, I don't have the detailed answers before me now, but we do have the car parking management plan condition, and I'd suggest that condition could be used, or we could amend that condition slightly to require details of how shop mobility provision might be made, both during construction and in the future. So I think there is a mechanism that we could possibly try and deal with that by. On public toilets and potentially drinking fountains for the public, there's no provision shown in the scheme at the moment. However, I don't think it would be beyond the wit of man or beyond bit of reasonable amendments to try and integrate some provision into the scheme with some amendments to the floor layout. It might result in a bit of loss of plant or retail space at the floor level, but I think that could probably be achieved. So I would suggest if that is a real concern to members, that could be addressed by way of an additional condition or a clause in the 106 agreement to include a requirement for amended details and provision. In terms of Nicholson's house, the officers have reported what we take as our standard approach to construction management in the report, which is largely because there is existing legislation to try and cover these matters. And in 99% of cases, that existing legislation is fit for purpose and indeed better to rely on because the powers are the correct ones to enforce it. And also, we don't want to get drawn into trying to mitigate disputes that are actually landowner or access disputes. However, in certain circumstances where there is a particular local or specific concern that might mean the normal regulations aren't adequate in a very specific instance, we can use conditions. So if there is a particular concern about access to Nicholson's house and potentially the users in Nicholson's house that goes beyond what is a normal circumstance, I think we could impose a condition to deal with certain aspects of construction management and access for Nicholson's house to address that. But I would say it would be kind of specific to the needs of this development, not something I'd recommend in general for all developments. Moving on, in terms of the question about parking space availability at Hines Meadow, I don't have a specific answer to whether the figures include spaces that are leased out. I have looked at our actual car parking usage statistics that the council has for council car parks, and they show that Hines Meadow car park has 1,320 spaces in it. They also indicate that on the average daily use, there aren't actually ever more than 800. On the highest average daily use, there's about 800 cars parking in it. And that's not car park utilisation, that's total number of cars parked in it. So the car park utilisation is much lower than that. So there is quite a lot of capacity in Hines Meadow car park at current, based on the figures that the council keeps.
Did anyone want to come back with any responses to the answers that they've been given for questions they've asked? Let's start with Councillor Baskerville first, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, just on that car parking, on page 58 of the report, section 10.269, it lists the amount of car parks that are likely to be in use for this development. I just wondered how realistic that list is, given the fact that over a period of time, some of these car parks could well disappear. And some of the figures I think are possibly questionable. I just wondered how up to date this list is, and how reliable it is in terms of making a decision tonight.
Councillor Baskerville, I agree with you on that. There's a couple of misnomers on there, like the railway station, 69 spaces. That's the forecourt. That's now paved over and it's got a 20-minute AMP yard. You know, it's mainly for taxis and just dropping off. It's not a car park. And Braywick's miles away from the town. So I've got a few questions surrounding car parking and what's been included in this. And we need the figures to be right. So anyway, I'll go to Councillor Taylor next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, quick question. I forgot to ask in my little blurb. The replacement car park that's being built, I'm assuming that is going to belong to the developer and it's not going to be an RBWM car park, am I correct?
I don't actually have anybody on the screen for further questions, so I don't know if you wanted to go. We're going to enter into the debate now while we're waiting for the answers. If you have got questions later on, we can obviously still go ahead and ask them. I've got no one else on my screen at the moment. Councillor Gosling?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on the car parking, I've got a couple of questions. Now we're talking about the car parking. Yeah, the one that's been taken out of the car park is Sienna Court. Is it, so what's going to happen with that one, the Sienna Court? Is it that one's derelict there at the moment? Is it, could we not have included that one in the car park? Is that in our pub? Is this a joint venture, this one? Because RBWM is the key landowner on this development. Understanding.
So if I come in, I mean, I don't know the specific answer. The development that the committee has before it tonight is the development that we've received a planning application for, and which we have to assess. As the Assistant Director of Planning, I'm not involved in detail in the actual, you know, land deals or discussions that have happened between the councillors, landowner and the developer about the reason or rationale as to why that building's not there or is there. But I would say it's not really for the members tonight. We have to assess the application that we have before us.
Okay, yeah, I was just, so obviously there's some concerns been raised about car parking, and I was just thinking, is there any flexibility on the members in terms of addressing any of the parking concerns? I know you said about this Hines Meadow. So that one there, there's 800 cars going in and out of the car park over the whole day, isn't it? So that's not, because there's 1320 spaces in total. So if them cars are parked there all day, does that mean there's 500 spaces left in capacity, or does that mean that there could be more?
I think that's actually, you know, that's why we need to know which ones are leased. I'm really struggling to understand the figures for Hines Meadow at the moment. Is that excluding the leased out ones that are on long-term lease or not? I'm finding that one a bit of a struggle.
I mean, I suppose the car parking is one of those probably interesting issues where what I can give members is the assurance that officers have looked at it in detail and officers are satisfied on the basis of what we've seen. But obviously we have in the background access to all of the council's reports about car park usage, car park availability, etc., which I currently have open in front of me on the laptop, but it is a very difficult matter to try and talk through or describe in any detail verbally. So I think all I can do is provide reassurance that members have looked at it, that actually the car park usage of the existing car parks in the town centre is very low, and indeed it does look like there's quite a lot of spare capacity there. Even if all the cars that do park there in a day would park there at once, there would be a lot of extra spaces. But I can appreciate it's probably going to be quite difficult for me to verbally give reassurances on that. So I suppose it's down to members to make a decision on if you're happy with what's in the report and what I've managed to reassure you, or if you need more before you make a decision. I can't make that decision for you.
Yeah, okay, no, I don't want you to make a decision for me, but what it is just wanted to get the clarity. Obviously, the members are raising the concerns about the Hines Meadow car park. Councillor Gosling's raised about the lifts not working. And also, I've been having a look at this car park, the new one that was built. the Vickers Way car park. And that one, it seems to be closed. There was a scaffolding all on the front of that building. It's been there for over a year now. And the ramp in the front, that's, you can't get up and down the ramp. And I don't know what's happening with that one because somebody said the concrete was falling on that roundabout on the front of that car park. Is that one out of action now? Or is that going to be used? Just one so I can make sure, that's got 500 spaces in there. And that accessibility ramp, because if somebody comes out of there in a wheelchair, somebody said to me, I was checking, I'm trying to find out with officers what's happened, why it's still up there. Because somebody said there's another ramp on the other side of the car park on Vickers Way. Because if that's working, then sometimes maybe these people can park there. But if that's out of action, we need to just make sure that car park is legal.
I think that's a problem with a lot of our car parks, which Councillor Gosling's already brought up. The lifts are always broken on Hines Meadow, and I think
we got. I mean, the thing is, you know, I don't want to go into the debate. There's, you know, we got no money to repair the car parks that we've got running there at the moment, and this is good development. A lot of money coming into the borough, £500 million. But will we be able to do some repair work on the car parks that we got with some of the contribution that we get from the development? Because that's scaffolding, for example, that's been up there. It's now on Google 2024, and that scaffolding is going to cost a lot of money to take down.
Can I interrupt you, Gert? I've just had an
Sorry,
email.
I just got side.
We've had an email come through saying the car park currently is operational. I know there's
Is it fully operational?
Yeah.
There was So it's an email that I've got in the Dem Services email, and you were CC'd in this morning, following on from your email that you sent to us regarding the scaffolding.
Yes, I was trying to
An
find
officer did respond this morning saying, thank you for your email. I've noted your comments and would like to inform you the car park in question is operational. In relation to the works, I've forwarded your email to a colleague in property services to comment. So regards to being operational, the car park is operational from this officer. So the scaffolding that is up there on the front, if you want to use a ramp, how do you go under the ramp? Because there's barriers there.
Councillor Singh, I think that's a separate conversation, this car park, but I know collectively we need to talk about car parks. There's lots wrong with the figures there anyway. But I think about the scaffolding, that's a different, if it's operational, we'll have to take it as that. But
you can jump over the barrier. Because at the moment, people are coming down on the stairs.
I don't even know if Vickers Way is featuring in this report anyway.
Is it not in the report?
No.
It's not even in the report?
No. So, which is strange because there's other car parks much further away that have been mentioned.
Because that Vickers Way car park, when I was checking last time, I had at the Maidenhead Town Forum, the officer said, Neil said to me, it's about 25% capacity. That's why I thought it was still open. But if that's closed down, then when that's reopened, and we'll have more capacity.
Well, I think your question needs to be more about what's going on with the car park figures that we've got in front of us. You know, why
haven't we included?
reliable?
We should have included, because by the time this is finished, this development, that will be ready for action. No. Sorry, there's a lot that I'm just trying to think about in my head.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to be a bit careful. So I mean, Vickers Way car park is open and available. It has about 500 spaces in it. On an average day, there's only about 90 cars that park in it, and the car park utilisation for that car park is very low. It's around 5% utilisation, so that just gives you an idea. You know,
5%.
Yeah, once you take into account turnover of car parking spaces, etc., there's a lot of capacity just talking about Vickers Way, and I think we've got to be somewhat careful in considering this. What we're thinking about tonight, which is the question that members have to be either satisfied on or not satisfied on, is this is a town centre development with town centre uses within the town centre. And it is not uncommon, and indeed it's perfectly common, and that's how it generally works, that a development in a town centre relies on the town centre public car parks for the parking capacity. That's where people go and park if they're going shopping, visiting or using facilities. Indeed, that's how the council ultimately makes income from the car parks, to try and maintain them and provide them as a provision. So the concept of the development relying on the town centre car parks should be completely non-contentious. That is what town centre developments do. I suppose the question members need to get their heads around is, do you believe, are you content that the amount of car parking available in the town centre is going to be adequate, having regard to this development, the reduction in retail uses, the changes of uses, etc. So that's the question for members. We've provided what information we can at the moment in the officers' report and the update sheet. There is more that officers have looked at, but it's very hard to put it all in writing. So they're the reassurances I can provide. What I was going to say is I think we need to be, very careful and somewhat careful. So the town centre car parks are there. They're in the town centre. They're an existing facility that is used, and they're down to the council to maintain and keep in the standards that we think are appropriate. So that whether to invest in those car parks does depend on the council's budget process and the council's finances, etc., etc. What we wouldn't be able to do is ask the developer for money via Section 106 to try and improve or maintain those car parks unless it meets the Reg 122 test. And I personally can't see how it would in this case. There are existing car parks that are there for the public. The council should maintain them to a standard it sees as fit for people to use, and the development itself isn't going to change the nature of the use of those car parks or the quantum of the use of those car parks to an extent where the contribution should be justified. So I thought I should just cover up that point, because I think that's where you were probably trying to get to, Councillor Singh.
But Adrian, that's what I think, that's where we wanted to get to. There is some contribution being made by developers, isn't there, for Section 106, or that's there, isn't it? Anyway, there is some contribution coming to the council, isn't there? Section 106. That's obviously there.
So everything that we've secured via Section 106 or Section 278 is set out in the recommendation section of the officers' reports, and members can refer to that. I've also verbally suggested that if members are concerned about the lack of toilets or drinking fountains, that could potentially be something that could also be secured by either a conditional 106.
Toilets, we need to have a look at toilets. At the moment, a lot of people, they're going toilet in the car park at the moment in Hines Meadow. People complaining about that. With toilets, we need them at day and night. Because at the moment, when the Nicholson Centre closes, it closes at 6 o'clock, they close the toilets and it's all closed off. I think that would be a good positive contribution if we can include it. Thank you.
Councillor Douglas?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, where am I on this? I mean, I think obviously we have to do a balancing exercise whenever we have these meetings. There's a lot of benefits being talked about from the scheme, and I mean, frankly, for me, there's a few major harms as well. I mean, for me, I'm really concerned about the design, but overall, and I don't want to get into too much detail because it's finely balanced enough in my mind that the fact we don't have this, we've got this discrepancy in the retail space means I'm not sure if I've got enough information to make a decision in front of me today. So looking at 10.17, so the officer's conclusion is that the potential loss of existing business on site is not considered to be, I think it means to be harmful to the function of the town centre, but is that based on the 50% or the 75% loss? You see, I don't know based on that if the other figures are right or these figures are right. If suddenly officers would consider that very harmful if we're getting 25% of our retail space instead of 50%. And that could be the deciding factor. So I mean, I'm not sort of putting emotion on the table, but to me, I'm thinking, how can I decide without that information? There might be some other information too that we need that we're missing on the parking. I mean, they're related, aren't they? If the retail's going down by half, maybe we don't need so much parking or public toilets, because you know, if it's going down to a quarter, maybe we do it the other way around or whatever. But yeah, do we not need to defer this until we've got that information? That's my question, but I'll wait and see what other councillors have to say. Thank you, Chair. Not yet, but that's what I'm minded to do if I'm not persuaded otherwise. Yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to table a motion to defer. I agree with what Jack has said in regards to we need further clarification to those figures. We can't really make a decision unless we have that. Given what Adrian has said about the toilets, that the developer might be willing to include them, I would like us to defer and the developers to go away and speak with the officers, see if that's possible. I have concerns around condition 37 and condition 38, which are the accessible and adaptable dwellings and the wheelchair user dwellings in the high rise. 30% of dwellings are going to be adaptable, 5% of dwellings are going to be wheelchair. The reason for these conditions are to ensure the accessibility of apartments and ensure the safety of the residents. There's no mention anywhere of personal fire escape plans, which is going to be needed in C2 residential when you've got residents over 65, and I have concerns about the safety. I would like something in there or more information on how that is going to happen. I have concerns about the parking. The NPPF says that when it comes to a town dwelling or a town centre regeneration, we need to be looking 10 years ahead. Now, it's all very well us saying that we've got car park figures for now, but car park figures for now aren't what is going to be going on once this development's finished. Now, Hines Meadow is a nightmare. The lifts are often broken, the travellators are often broken. Stafferton Way is actually nearing end of life. Now, I would like to, before I make a decision on if I think the parking is adequate, I would like to know what the lifespan of Hines Meadow and Stafferton Way currently is expected to be, if any work is scheduled on those car parks to fix the problems that they have. Because if we don't know that, we're not going to know whether the parking is actually adequate. The fact that Braywick has been included in this when that's not a town centre car park is ridiculous, along with the fact that the spaces at the town train station have been included that are no longer there. So I don't think we can make a decision on that, which is a huge thing for people, because if we're going to regenerate a town centre and we're looking to attract people into the town centre and we're looking to house that many people in the town centre, if we don't know that the parking is going to be adequate, we are going to end up with chaos. We are not going to have enough parking spaces. It's going to affect the roads around the town centre. And that is a major, major concern. This is a huge project. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And this is an opportunity that has been delayed and that should have been done years ago. We're already at the point where, we're late bringing this through. That's not a reason to rush it through and just go, yep, fine, great, whatever. The presentation sounds great. We'll just, we'll go with it. We need to be sure for our residents that this is going to work. And I'm not convinced currently we are. I'm also not convinced on the biodiversity claims. I'm a little concerned about where solar panels are going to go when we've got rooftop gardens. So, I wouldn't mind a bit more information about that. But we have to remember that Bracknell and High Wycombe have already redeveloped their town centres, and you don't have residential on top of those town centres. But what you do have is a recognition that they're open air. There's going to be weather issues, and some parts in Eden, in High Wycombe, a lot of it has actually got a roof over it, and some parts of Bracknell also have. And it beggars belief that this project, they haven't thought about at least having some of that area covered over, because climate change is happening. We've seen it. People are not going to shop in the wide open in rain and hail and wind, and the wind is going to go up because of the height of the buildings. So I have concerns about that as well. And I'm not comfortable making a decision tonight with so many questions over the facts that we've got in front of us or the facts that we don't have in front of us. So I would like to differ, please.
Thank you, councillor Taylor. Got that noted. Can I go to councillor Cashmere Singh, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to the point that a couple of other councillors have mentioned. The Nicholson's car park had 734 parking spaces. On a busy day, Friday, Saturday, you was hard pressed to even find a parking space at the top. Now, this is going to reduce it by half. We're going to build lots of flats with 20 stories height, and the Barclays Bank in the High Street, that's been converted into flats as well. There is inadequate parking space already as it is. The claim by officers that there's already adequate parking space and it's not being used properly, it's not true. So many people don't drive into town, they go to shop other places. They go into town, try all the car parks, there's no parking, and they either go home or they go to Bracknell or High Wycombe. So taking that, but I haven't had an answer to the biodiversity, which I asked the officers about. This claim that we're going to have 800% gain, I want to nail that down. Where are they getting these figures from? From the company Ariel, or it's just been plucked out of the air? And there's so many things that are wrong with this application. It fails on the tilted balance. And I can quote so many policies that it contradicts. QP3, design quality, HO2, housing mix and amenity standards, and the DE3. So our own policy that we voted for and adopted, coming back to the SPD, it contradicts that. So we shouldn't be asked to just rubber stamp a policy or an application that officers have approved, because we are answerable to our voters. We've been elected, and we should not be put in that impossible position. With all that said, I think there is a significant and demonstrable harm with this application, and I propose the panel refuse permission for this. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Singh. I agree with you on the parking and that the new one's greatly reduced, and it seems to be allocated a lot of that, which councillor Taylor's already brought up, that the residents will park, and how that's going to work, I'm not really sure. Anyway, can I bring in councillor Douglas, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sort of contemplating offering to second councillor Taylor's motion, but do we need some clarity on exactly what the deferral reason is? But I also want to say, if I may, I do agree with councillor Cashmere Singh's what he said about QP3, and so does the report. I mean, the report says that it's not, the development is not considered to meet all the criteria of policy QP3. But, and this is maybe a question for Adrian, I mean, in my mind, that's the understatement of the century. And I don't think there's anything we can do with conditions to fix it. So if we are deferring, the question is, can we also, as a deferral reason, if Helen is willing to accept it, add in something on the design side to say, can we look at the design again? I mean, QP3 talks about high quality design that responds to the distinctive character of the borough, respects and enhances the local natural or historic character of the environment. I mean, this is a big, huge development, and it is going to create its own identity in the centre of the town. But I don't think that identity and character should drag the whole town down. And if there's something that can be done, if we're deferring anyway, to ask the applicant to look again at this, try and improve the design, make it more in keeping with the historic sort of look and feel of Maidenhead, and I'd like to ask Helen to include that in her deferral reason.
Thank you. So, I mean, I think there's a couple of questions I'd like to answer because I think it would be helpful to members and might inform things. And then I'll provide clarity on that last point. So, in terms of the retail space discrepancy, I think I've got to the bottom of it in that I believe the difference is that one of the figures includes the back of house floor space, so the storage, storerooms, etc., and one of the figures doesn't. But I'm still not in a position to give you the actual two sets of figures that match up. In terms of Councillor Singh's questions about biodiversity net gain, the answer is in effect that there is a government-approved metric that has to be used for calculating and quantifying biodiversity net gain, which has been filled in and completed by a qualified person, assessed by the council's qualified person. So, the 800% figure is the figure that comes out of the official government metric on how you calculate it. Now, obviously, it's a high figure because there isn't any biodiversity on the Nicholson site at the moment because it is a completely developed shopping centre site. So the threshold is, your starting point is pretty low for there to be net gain above. It's not like redeveloping a field or a forest or something where the starting point is very high. So that's just a couple of answers on a couple of questions which hopefully might help inform the thinking. In terms of if members are thinking of deferral, what we would need to have is a list of the specific aspects that members think they need more clarity or information on to inform a decision, because what we can't do is defer today, have officers and the applicants work to provide extra information to try and address concerns, and then come back in 2 months' time and then have another separate different list of concerns or issues come up for more information. So we need to kind of get to the point where we know exactly the headings and the topics of information that members think you need to help you feel comfortable to make a decision. And what I would also say is we do have to consider the application before us. So I think it's fine to defer for information that will inform members' thinking or allow you to make an informed evidence-based decision around whether the judgments are right on car parking, or potentially minor clarifications about toilets and things like that. But it really wouldn't be appropriate to try and defer because people want the scheme redesigned or don't like the design. That wouldn't really be a deferral reason. So it does need to be set things that are kind of evidence-based, information-based, that we need to be able to give to members so that you feel you've got the right information to make a decision on. And if we can get to the bottom of that list, then that provides both officers and the applicant the clarity we need to hopefully get you the right information if we come back.
Thank you, Adrian. Just before I go, I've got a few people on the list, but I think it's fair actually to bring Councillor Taylor in now because it is her motion based on what Adrian's just outlined there.
Do you want a list?
If we could start the list,
Yeah.
other people got questions as well.
I would want to defer because I would want amendments to the car park management plan to include provision for shop mobility in the duration of the demolition and construction phase of the development. I would want a condition added or a conversation to be had with the developers and our officers to include public facilities within the scheme, because I do not believe that it is viable to have that amount of people in a residential area and a shopping area and no public toilets at all. I think that's that's going to cause problems, and it's going to cause us problems. I want the car parking figures re-looked at. I want the car parks that aren't relevant, like Braywick and the railway station, to be taken out, Vickers Way to be included, and to find out Hines Meadow and Stafton Way, what the lifespan of those car parks is likely to be, and if we as a council have any work scheduled to improve those car parks, given the state they're in, so that we are confident that those car parks will be used, because we're looking at 10 years ahead here, and I can't make that decision on the information we've got currently. I would like a condition for Nicholson's house. As Adrian mentioned, I realise it's not a usual thing we do, but if we can do it, I think we need to liaise with the leaseholders to make sure that any condition we put on there is going to be relevant for what they need, because there's no point us putting a condition on there and then we're finding out that, you know, they still can't get access or there's problems. So that needs to be something that happens, and that is brought back to us. Whilst I agree with what Jack says about design, I think we're too far down the road for any of that. I also would like information around the previous conditions I mentioned. Was it 37, 38 and 39? I would like information on personal fire escape plans. I think that should be written in a condition at this stage. I think leaving it out doesn't sit well with me for the safety of our future residents. And I think that needs to be thought of now, not an afterthought of, well, whoever's managing the building and the C2 residential gets to sort that out. I'm not comfortable with that, given the amount of residential we're potentially looking at seeing there. So they are the ones I specifically would like using for deferral reasons.
You did mention something earlier about retail side. Is there anything you wanted to add on that, or if I've just got that on my notes? It might be when we're just generally speaking.
Me. Retail, that wasn't me.
About the space, maybe that was Jack.
I think that was Jack, yeah.
Can I go to councillor Kashmir Singh, please?
Thank you, Chair. The developer's own substantive scenarios show only 1 out of 25 reports showing that this is a viable plan. 2 of the chartered surveyors in separate reports have shown that the margins are so low, paragraph 4.2, and I don't want to go too much in detail because I think the officers have that, all of that. My conclusion on having read everything on that's been available to this is the application has material contradictions with the adopted policy and guidance. So I'll state exactly what they are. SP2, NR2, B1 to 3, QP3, HE1, and RBWM's tall building, SPD, excessive height and harm to heritage. AL1, ED1, ED3, employment floor space, shortage of allocation. And HO3 is the most important one, which I'm concerned about, is the absence of affordable housing, let alone any social housing. There is going to be 0. So having section 106 and so on does not matter. And this claim that's going to be £500 million is coming in, I think we had that a few years back with the golf club. So I would take this with a pinch of salt. These claims, the amount of money that's going to be generated and so on. And I come back to, and the last one is DE3, inadequate amenity provision. So I would plead with this panel that there is significant demonstrable harm with this application. Thus, I propose the panel refuse permission for it. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Kashmir. I've already got your proposal for that one, but we've got one on the table to defer. That is already seconded. I have some more speakers though. Can I go to? Oh, I thought Jack. I thought he did. He said he was happy to. Councillor Douglas, can I just confirm, when you said you were happy to second, was that officially a seconding? So it's not official at the moment? Okay, thank you.
So, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to try and provide, I've been taking quite a detailed list, so I just wanted to try and provide a bit of advice on what I've heard and what I think could constitute a reason for deferral versus not. One of the things I'm really conscious of in my mind is that the guidance on how to deal with planning applications and conditions is that you should approve an application if it can be made acceptable by way of conditions. And I think quite a few of the things on the deferral list were things to do with extra conditions or things that officers have said could be addressed by conditions. So my guidance would be, I don't think the things which are extra conditions could form a formal reason for deferral, because obviously we as officers are advising they're capable of being addressed by conditions, and if we're following guidance, we can do that. Now, obviously, if we defer for other reasons, if there's things to tidy up about conditions, which we've said tonight, we can add, but we'll do that in the background, even if they're not the formal reason for deferral. So out of the ones I've heard, I think quite a lot of them would fall into that category. I think the extra information about car parking, car park usage, availability, etc., probably genuinely falls into the category of extra information that perhaps we as officers have, but hasn't been put before you in a way that is helpful. The fire safety point, I think my view would probably be I think there's 3 conditions on the condition which do deal with fire safety matters, 37 to 39. So as an officer, my view would be that they're addressed by that. I'm not quite as concerned about it as some of the other condition ones. So if members do want a bit more information on fire safety, etc., I dare say we could provide that. And then my other question mark, just having heard the debate, is whether there is a deferral reason on retail that members want to explore as well, which I think will probably come up in the debate. So at the moment, I think my advice would be car parking, possibly fire safety, and possibly retail, depending on how members feel.
We go to Councillor Gosling, please.
Yes, I go back to my questions about independent living. We've got pages and pages, and Knight, Frank and Rutley were involved with this. Is there a counter viability study done on housing? Because we need more houses. I can't see the point of 101 independent living residences when we could just have 101 flats done. And people can make their own changes within the flats if they wish to. But we have a shorting of houses. I can understand the cost of social housing has been looked at and has not been approved in this report because of the cost, presumably. So that's my question. I'd like to see a counter report done to counteract Knight, Frank and Rutley. They are estate agents, and it is a difference between a different body doing housing. The other question I have is how much would a 106 in pounds cost?
Thank you, Councillor Gosling. I have similar concerns about those figures from the Knight Frank. We really need our own figures from RBWM from adult services to actually establish what the real need is for the borough. So I've had similar concerns and I have requested that, but it's not been in time for this meeting by the looks of it. So I'm going to go to Councillor Douglas before I come back to the officers to answer your questions. Councillor Gosling.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, so Councillor Taylor, I mean, a couple of sort of questions about the deferral reasons. The car parking, Adrian mentioned. At the moment, we've got Braywick in the figures and Kennet Road in the figures and Vickers Way's out. And I wonder if, when we defer, we should say, look, let's just keep it simple. Let's have a reassessment of the town, the parking based on the town centre core. Yeah, that's a reasonable sort of boundary where, shoppers are going to reasonably be able to park and carry heavy shopping. The town centre core is defined in the placemaking documents, the studies that were done to support the BLP. And also based on car parks that are actually going to exist in a year's time, never mind, when the development's finished. So Kennet Road and the existing Broadway car park, if we could just, make sure the reassessment is done based on, the right location and realistic sort of checking off car parks that are really going to be there. On the retail space harm, I think, we need to make sure the figures are clear and explicit, first of all. But I also wonder if we should extend that bit and say, look, if the space really is more than 50%, so that's what the debate is, the discrepancy in the figures, we should get a fuller report. We need a fuller report when we come back to panel based on what the actual harm to the retail environment of Maidenhead is going to be. So if you're happy to take those two sort of issues into your deferral, Councillor Taylor, I'll be very pleased to second the motion.
Bring you in, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to amend to just redo the car parking to make sure it's right, because I think there's too many issues with it, and I've said a number of them, and Jack has as well. So I'm happy to change that wording, and I'm happy to include the retail assessment to make sure that we've got those figures. I'm not trying to be awkward, but we can't get this wrong. This is huge for our residents and for our town, and we can't afford to make decisions without all of the correct information in front of us. And me personally, as an elected representative, I'm not willing to do that. Yes, I realise that we are where we are and it has to be done, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to wave something through for the sake of waving something through. It has got to be right, and we owe that to our residents.
Yeah, very happy. Yeah. Yeah, so the car parking, and we're going to sort of get the area defined and make sure they're real car parks. And on the retail harm, if it's less than 50%, if the loss is bigger than 50%, we get a fuller report of what the impact that's going to have. So yeah, in which case, happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
You happy with that, Councillor Taylor? Yes. Yeah. Excellent. So one more speaker on the screen. That's Councillor Gergesine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I see the mood music in the room, and it's sort of, people are sort of still quite concerned about this application. It's a shame. This has been 6 years in the making. There's a huge amount of investment and money been spent, officer time. It's been administration led for about 6 years. Obviously it's a new administration now, but yeah, there's concerns there in terms of height, parking, design, and whatnot, and there's a huge number of reasons there for refusal. I know Councillor Kashmir Singh has got a motion now to refuse the application. There was just, I know you mentioned that this failed a tilted balance test, but I think the tilted balance is activated at the moment. We don't have a 5-year house and land supply.
Yes, that's correct. So we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. Michael clarified the figure earlier. I think it's about 4.07 from memory. So
okay,
we are in the tilted balance because we need to provide more housing. So obviously the housing provision, and I say housing provision because that includes both the C3 and also the C2, because that is a type of provision of accommodation, are both positive factors, very significant positive factors in the weighting, but we are in the tilted balance.
Right. Okay. So that so with the tilted balance, does that mean that it's the presumptions in favour of approving the application. Is that what that means?
Yes, so it's a tilted balance towards approving the application, and unless there are significant harms, demonstrable and significant harms which outweigh the benefits of the scheme.
Okay.
But it's very much tilted towards approval.
Councillor Kashmir Singh was also saying there's significant and demonstrable harm. Is that your opinion as well, or that's not your opinion?
I mean, given my opinions in the officer's report that I've signed off, which recommends approval, it's fairly safe to say it's not my opinion. But obviously, it's for members to make the decision as members of the panel. But I can only tell you my opinion set out in the officer's report.
Right, I understand. Thank you for guidance on that. Yeah, look, we've got to be very careful because the borough is in a difficult position, and I know we don't sort of think about sort of appeals and cost and everything, but if this goes to appeal, what do? We don't want to be in a position where the applicant ends up bankrupting the borough, and that will put us in a very difficult. We've got to be very responsible. We're guided by the planning policies and that we've set as a council, and also national planning policies. I think, given the concern, and obviously there's a motion there for deferral. Is it defer and delegate, or is it defer and delegate? Defer and bring back, yeah, that's it. I think important application has been, it'd be good to have this back for transparency back at the committee. So that's good. I just wanted to check, because there's 6 reasons there for deferral. Is it, did you say you could have a look at those reasons and see if you can focus them? And just sort of see if you could streamline them reasons. So the ones that can be addressed by condition, they're addressed by condition, and the ones that we deal with, obviously we'll deal with. But I'm also thinking about obviously we've got a gentleman here from the Eco Sustainability Group, and we need to think about our climate and environment and all. Future-proofing, once in lifetime opportunity. I'm thinking about sustainable transport and a transport plan. I was very shocked to hear about the Vickers Way car park, which is 5% capacity. Is there something, rather than building another tower block car park, so originally it was 10-storey car park, is it possible to, and I know Councillor Douglas wants it, the car park within the town centre area, where obviously it's very, very tight, and we need as much retail in there as possible. We don't want a tower block car park. Is it possible to have a transport plan and have a look at a park and ride scheme from Vickers Way, or make that, use that within the parking? Because what we can do effectively with this scheme is obviously utilise existing car parks. Because if it comes back to committee and we only consider the town centre car parks, and we got Hines Meadow, for example, the broken lifts and the travel aid is not working, so that's not accessible. We knocked that out, and then we're not left with much car park.
So I think there's a couple of points here. One, I think, in terms of the deferral and car parking, Councillor Douglas has asked to focus on the town centre car parks. I'm going to say, regardless of what happens, we won't focus solely on the town centre car parks, because there are car parks such as Vickers Way that are within easy walking distance, and indeed, if we didn't take them into account as existing and being there, then we potentially would be misleading ourselves. So while I kind of appreciate there's a focus on the town centre car parks, it won't ignore the car parks outside it. The other thing I'd say is the the existing heads of terms that officers have recommended include quite a lot to do with highways works and travel measures, so including the incorporation of a car club, including a travel plan, etc. So, you know, we wouldn't be able to, and it wouldn't be appropriate to go down to the detail of trying to set out very specific individual measures, particularly things that are outside of the ownership or remit potentially of the applicant to deliver, or might involve other things such as licensing regimes. But what I could say is, you know, the travel plan would be a live evolving document that would try and address making sure people could make the most of sustainable transport, making sure there were travel to work schemes and signposting and provision. We wouldn't stipulate the detail of that, but it would be there. If the applicant felt it was appropriate to include some kind of shuttle buses for some of the employers, etc., then they could propose that, but I don't think it would be appropriate for us to try and insist on it.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, when we have had applications before this committee. I remember one in Cookham where that we approved, and we put in a bus plan for, I think it's 2 years or 3 years to see if it works, and then it falls off. And we did similar with the Braywig Leisure Centre. We had a planning condition in there that bus went from the old leisure centre to the new one, and that was trialled during COVID. And they found that during COVID, nobody used the bus, so that condition fell away. So we can have a condition in place where we can see if there's a demand for the car park, rather than building tower block car park. We can see if people travel from Vickers Way, and if they use that, then that will kill two birds with one stone. I think that would be very sensible. And I think that the other important thing is that the development, this does give us a car park. We are desperate in need of a car park in the town centre. And the one we got at the moment, the surface one, is not very appropriate. It looks like a war zone down there. It's very rough, it's uneven, it's very dusty, it's got hoarding all around it, and it looks a little bit dangerous as well. I'm not sure, so it might be legal, but it doesn't feel right. That's why people aren't using that car park. We need a car park in the town centre. We need this development, but we need it right. So there's a little bit of tweaking. Air caution. What's the word? It's air, isn't it? Air caution. Air caution. Give a little bit of caution on the refusal. Let's not go for the refusal. Let's do the if members are not comfortable, defer it on the limited reasons, and then let's have it back, and then have a look and see if it's a little bit better. And if the design, did you put the design in there, Councillor Taylor, as well? Didn't design. You're happy with the design? Are we happy with design? No.
It's not a deferral.
It's not a deferral. No. Okay. Then that's all. That's the only. There's nothing else to debate. Then that's the only thing left, isn't there? Thank you. Cheers.
I think design can be brought in if you wanted it to, but I'll leave that with you. You want
I mean, what we want is, you know, we would, you know, obviously the applicants, they were talking about this is going to be the blueprint design for town centre regeneration, and what we want Maidenhead is when a scheme is approved for regeneration, we know it needs to be regenerated. When a scheme's approved, we want that scheme to be world class, and at the moment it's just a little bit short of that level.
Well, no, I agree. It's falling short on the design.
It's a little bit short. It's nothing to. I know officers have been working very hard with applicants and you know, the administration. We just need to get it right.
Yeah.
We need to go a little bit back to the drawing board and get a little bit more information.
Can I bring Councillor Taylor in?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, just a couple of things. Am I right, Adrian, in thinking that what Councillor Singh was talking about in the park and ride left my head then for some reason? When we come back and talk conditions, we were talking about the travel management plan and the car park thing, etc. We can get something worded into the conditions at that point where we're considering at that time, can't we? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, on the park and ride point, yeah, my view is just that it's probably something that won't be securable or viable. That there's a travel plan that will set out measures, but the kind of examples that Councillor Singh was giving about, you know, supporting bus routes, etc., to see if they work, they're all talking about you know, rural locations where there potentially aren't adequate bus routes, aren't adequate public transport, etc., and you're looking to try and improve the provision. That really doesn't apply to the centre of Maidenhead, and in reality, Vickers Way car park is a very short walk. I know people have a perception that it isn't, but it is a very short walk to the town centre. So I don't think we'd be able to insist on it. What I was trying to provide reassurance of is that there are quite a lot of measures included in the section 106, which would facilitate people being able to live without a car, use the development without a car, and access it by sustainable means. So that's what I was attempting to clarify. If it's okay, Chair, if I could also just come in again on the design point, because I really do feel I have to clarify that, you know, where we're looking at deferral reasons, we have to be deferring for things which are to do with evidence or additional information that we think is lacking and prohibiting us from making a decision, and things that we think can be addressed within a reasonable time scale. So I don't think a deferral reason of we don't like the design, could the design be made a bit better, would be an appropriate deferral reason. I will be honest, we as officers, and I suspect the applicants wouldn't have a clue what needed to be done to get it to the point to bring it back, and realistically a complete redesign of the scheme isn't a minor deferral matter. It's quite significant. So I would probably strongly steer towards the three more factual ones, whether members like the design or not, whether the applicant chooses to make any tweaks to the design in the interim is probably a separate matter, but I don't think it's a deferral reason. That's a matter of judgment members will have to reach when you ultimately determine the application.
You've kind of stolen what I was about to say, sort of, because I was going to say that that's a refusal reason, not a deferral reason. I'm right, aren't I? Yeah. So I'm happy with my reasons I've given for deferral. If Councillor Douglas is still happy to second, I think we're good.
I just wanted a bit of clarity on the possibly the condition regards to toilet facilities, because that was mentioned earlier and it's been glossed over a bit now, because you know, the way it stands, we're in danger of requiring a breed of superhumans with iron bladders to wander around Maidenhead. I don't think that's something that's liable to happen. So I think we do need that condition pinned down with some clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Baskerville. Councillor Kashmir Singh, do you have anything that's to add on the motions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask Mikey, said he had an email from one of the officers regarding Vickers Way, that the upper floors can be used. In the past, the problem with that car park was they've got barriers on one or both sides that you can't go up the ramp or come down because your wheels actually hit the side and they damage that. That's on a normal vehicle, but a larger vehicle, you just can't go up on any floor. If you do, you know, you find your wheels will fall off your car. And that's why people aren't using that car park. And Councillor Singh knows that as well. The other thing I wanted to ask is if we going to take a vote on to defer, can we get the applicant to have, as is usually required, 20% affordable housing on the site?
I don't think we can do that.
That is normally the prerequisite to approving a big development.
That's the thing, that wouldn't be a deferral reason. I'm happy to bring Adrian in to explain that.
Yes, no, I mean, that wouldn't be a deferral reason. The scheme you've got before you is the scheme that's been proposed. It's been accompanied by a viability assessment from the applicant, which talked about the viability of the scheme, the deliverability, and whether it would be viable to deliver affordable housing. That assessment's been reviewed by the council's independent viability reviewer who's agreed with it. And the way affordable housing policy works is affordable housing is a very important, very significant planning benefit, and policy seeks to try and secure a certain amount, but planning policy recognises that in circumstances where schemes aren't deliverable, affordable housing shouldn't be something that prevents the regeneration of a site or the delivery of housing and other benefits in total, just because a percentage hasn't been hit. So the way that policy works is you look at the viability of the scheme, and if the scheme isn't viable with affordable housing, then under all affordable housing policies, you have to reduce the affordable housing provision. So
there doesn't seem to be any affordable housing on this, the way the application is, and it still seems this scheme is unviable. So I'll come back to that. So what is the amount that we're going to receive in S106 for this application? Or are we going to lose that as well if the scheme fails?
So I was trying to think about the question. So, I mean, under affordable housing, there's no affordable housing proposed, but there's a review mechanism proposed. So if things are as they're modelled at the moment, the scheme wouldn't deliver affordable housing. If market viability improves, there potentially would be the delivery of affordable housing or a clawback. The other things in the Section 106 agreement, I think the only two that are viability linked are affordable housing and the carbon offset payment. So everything else in there is a clearly secured mitigation measure. So everything else would be definitively delivered if the scheme was implemented.
Okay. I just wanted to nail down the figures on how much are we as a council going to receive, or has that agreement been done? What is the amount?
Well, there isn't a monetary figure because a lot of measures in the 106 aren't monetary measures. They're actually delivery or implementation measures. So I can't give you a financial figure for the value of the 106 because they're actual delivery measures, not monetary contributions.
Right. Okay, thank you for that.
Before I go to Councillor Gosling, Councillor Gosling, you had a question, didn't you? You might have to remind me what that was, or?
Yeah, my question was about, I just felt that Knight, Frank and Rutley were the only people that put forward about independent living. We didn't have a counter report done on the need for housing. And I feel it's more important to have more houses, as in flats built.
Yeah. We covered about the RBWM having an input on that already, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's fine. Last speaker, Councillor Gerson.
I just wanted to come back, so I'll name check that. Yeah, I can concur with that Kashmir thing. That car park, the Vickers Way one, as you go up the barriers, barriers are very, very tight. You can't get the car up there. I had to change my car, I've got a smaller car now because I might be able to get it up there now. But it was just car wouldn't fit there. And if you look on the internet, on Google, Vickers Way car park, all of the reviews are there, people getting their cars scraped. Very, very tight. Just want to make sure that this car park, you know, obviously you have safety barriers, but you're not going to be when you go up and down, it needs to be enough space to get the cars up and down. The cars are getting bigger, and a lot of people, they're driving the 4x4 vehicles as well, and the longer vehicles. Got to make sure they're going to get up and down the ramps. So make sure there's enough clearance on there. I know the bays are 5 meters by 2.5 meters, but the bit ramp up and down, that needs to be, make sure that's big enough. And the other thing I was going to say something else as well. The cost of the building in the town centre. That's the other problem, that's putting the cost up. To build in the town centre is very, very expensive. And I can see what's happening with this affordable housing, social housing. We need it, we're desperate for social housing, but the town centre is very, very expensive to redevelop. And that's why we had an office block that was approved last week. That was empty for over 16 years. And once this comes back, so if we have another condition, there's 49 planning conditions on this at the moment. There's a huge number of planning conditions on there. That'll be 50. Will them conditions be cleared before the site gets finished and occupied? Because that's going to take a long time to clear those conditions. There's a lot of restrictions on that for the applicant.
So I mean, just to come in on that, I mean, obviously that it's a bit of a unique permission because it's a hybrid permission, which means it's in part outline and in part full. So the reality of that condition list is there are some conditions that relate to the outline element, some that relate to the full element, and there is a degree of duplication in there because there's instances where a condition is very similar, but one deals with the outline and one deals with the full. So just as clarity, there's probably more there because of the nature of the scheme than the members would be used to seeing on a straightforward full planning application. On top of that, some of them will be ones that require approval and discharge of details, and others will simply be ones that require compliance. But yes, absolutely, if the scheme's approved subject to the conditions, then where they require the submission and approval of details before commencement or before a certain point, then the developer would be required to do that, so they would be discharged.
Okay, thank you. Just one small follow-up, technical question. On the proposal, it's in two parts, part one and part two. Do we have to decide on all of that together, or can we decide on part two and then part one, or separately?
No, so it's a hybrid application, which means part of the scheme is a full detailed permission where we have all the details we need, and part of it has some matters reserved. So we would get a submission of a reserved matters application for the outline element at a later date, which has those additional details in. But it's one planning application, and local planning authorities don't have the ability to issue split decisions on planning applications. Planning inspectorate do, but local planning authorities can't. So we have to either approve or refuse the whole lot. You couldn't go, we like the detailed bit, but not the outline bit when we eventually do get to determine.
Because that's a shame, isn't it? Because otherwise you could have dealt with maybe one of them today and one on the deferral note, but it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. So I've got no other speakers on my screen. So we're ready to go to the vote, but we need to sum up.
Adrian, just confirm the deferral.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of the deferral reasons, what I have noted down as the deferral reasons is additional information on car parking, additional information on retail, and additional information on fire safety. I appreciate that there was greater detail and context on that, which I've got notes about, but I would suggest that for the actual recorded deferral reason, those three headline points would be adequate, and officers have the rest in their notes and can pick up with the developer afterwards.
So they were the ones like the shop ability and the other bits that you noted on, that could be dealt with in a different way than deferral reasons.
Yes, we felt that they could be dealt with by conditions. I mean, it may well be that when we come back, there is some additional information on them anyway, because it's helpful, but the actual formal deferral reasons would be those three I've mentioned.
Understood. So we're doing it a different way today. We're doing a named vote, but we're doing it on our new little gadget. So I'll read the script out for that. So on your microphone units in front of you, please indicate if you are for, against, or abstaining on the vote. You may assist your colleagues in how to use the devices, but please ensure that you cast your own votes. Please touch green to indicate for, red to indicate against, or yellow to indicate abstain. Live results will be shown on the screen. If you click the wrong one by mistake, please simply re-click the correct one. Please alert Democratic Services by raising your hand if you have any issues. You will have 1 minute to cast your vote. We're ready to open?
Yep.
So voting period is now open. So Councillor Gershing, yeah, there we go.
We're all happy.
That's all happy?
Everyone's happy that they've clicked their button. We can stop the vote early.
Yeah, if you're happy, we can close the vote. Happy? Excellent.
So 6 in favour, 1 against, so the motion to defer passes.
Thank you. There's no other agenda items on tonight's agenda, so that's the meeting closed. Thank you.